Hello, everyone. Welcome in live to the city of New Orleans one final time for us in this special edition of DawgNation Daily with post-game coverage of last night's ugly defeat for Georgia at the hands of Texas 28-21, presented by Northside Hospital. My name is Brandon Adams. Thanks so much for being with us here today. Obviously, today's program will feature a lot of reaction from you, your chance to vent and complain about what you saw last night from Georgia. We'll do our part to cover everything that happened in the immediate aftermath of the game from the Georgia locker room and the Georgia press conference, especially given the fact that the game ended so late last night. I know that many of you probably didn't get a chance to see some of the things that Kirby Smart had to say and some of the things that Georgia players had to say. We'll do our part on this special DawgNation Daily Live from New Orleans to bring that to you, including Kirby Smart, Jake Fromm, and Jonathan Ledbetter coming up here in just a moment. I'll also tell you this. I want you to stick around for later on in today's program. We're going to hear from Georgia wide receiver MECOLE HARDMAN, Georgia running back Elijah Holyfield. Holyfield and HARDMAN were two of the players that were very outspoken on Twitter on Saturday night about how Georgia should have been the college football playoff with Notre Dame and Oklahoma playing the way they did in those national semifinal games. Holyfield and HARDMAN were two of the more high-profile Georgia players, upset with what they saw from the college football playoff selection committee. A lot of Georgia fans had asked going into the Sugar Bowl that those kinds of comments on Twitter put more pressure on Georgia to play well. And the fact that Georgia gets beaten the way that it did, do those tweets make Georgia look worse? So we took that conversation head on with HARDMAN and Holyfield. I think you're going to be proud of the fact that they stood there and they addressed those issues and took complete ownership for the things that they tweeted and didn't duck any questions about, how those tweets may have impacted the perception of Georgia after the loss to a Texas in the Sugar Bowl. So you're going to see that later on in today's program. And, before we hear from Kirby Smart, I guess let me also offer an early thought here. Is that with Georgia getting beaten up the way that it did last night on a national stage with everyone watching, there's really no denying that the Georgia brand is going to have to be rebuilt here a little bit after this one. This was a tarnishing loss in a lot of respects. It certainly would seem to cast a shadow on what up to this point had been considered a pretty good season for Georgia, and yet the way that it ends is certainly going to leave a lot of questions. Questions will be asked during this offseason and then ultimately answered probably in the 2019 season. You'll hear Kirby Smart talk some about that. You'll hear Jake Fromm talk some about that. Jonathan Ledbetter will reflect in on his career. So we've got a lot of Northside Hospital post-game coverage coming for you today here on DawgNation Daily. And by the way, speaking of Northside Hospital, make sure you check them out online at sportsmedicine.northside.com. That's sportsmedicine.northside.com. Or give them a call at 1-855-NH-SPORT. 1-855-NH-SPORT. They got 10 locations in the Atlanta area. There's one close to you. Their sports medicine experts can get you back in the game. If you've got an aching back or a hurt knee or anything else, Northside Hospital will take good care of you. We've got a lot of interviews to show for you here over the course of the program to give you an idea of how Georgia itself felt about losing to Texas last night. Let's begin this way, though. Georgia coach Kirby Smart, quarterback Jake Fromm, Jonathan Ledbetter, spokesman for the Georgia team all season long, including last night after an ugly defeat. Thanks for being with us here on this special edition of DawgNation Daily. Let's catch up on what the coach and a couple of the players had to say.
New Orleans for hosting us. I also want to congratulate Texas. Tom did a great job with his team and his program. They've gotten better throughout the season. They played more physical than us, and it showed to me that they wanted it more than we did, and you got to give them credit for that. I also want to thank my seniors. We got a group of seniors on this team that they came in as 30-something signees, and it's down to about 6 or 7 or 8 guys that are actually playing now out of that senior class. And that's all that's left is that group. And they've bought into what this staff has wanted to do. They've led, they've done the hard things, and they've won a lot of football games. And they've helped turn this program in the right direction. We just got to find a way to finish it and do it the right way, and we'll do that moving forward. Thank you.
We'll open up the floor to questions. We ask that you raise your hand and identify yourself by name and media outlet. Right here on the right.
Dan Matthews, 6A, The Fan in Atlanta. Coach Smart, did it necessarily surprise you how physical they were on both sides of the line of scrimmage tonight?
I wouldn't say it surprised me. Their league, guys, people don't respect their league like we do, especially from a scoring standpoint. They do a great job in their league of up-tempo, fast, but when they have to play physical, they play physical. And I thought they did a good job of that. I thought their quarterback managed the game well with his quarterback run play. He really hurt us. We missed tackles and didn't finish on him defensively. And then we weren't really able to run the ball like we like to consistently. And give Texas credit. They did a good job stopping that.
Also on the right-hand side right here.
Kirby, do you think that the not getting into the playoff thing overtook Dean Legge from Dog Post? Do you think that overtook the focus from this game?
I think that would be easy to say, but I certainly don't think that when you go to a meeting, that's what you're thinking about. You're thinking about Texas. When you're on the practice field, you're thinking about Texas. We're preparing for Texas. We prepared for Texas for a long time. So that would be an easy excuse to use. I'm not touching that because it has nothing to do. We had an opponent to play, a good football team in which our team was focused on ready to play. I think the world of social media, it's easy to say things, but 15, 20 years ago, you didn't know what kids were thinking because they didn't have an ability to tweet it out or show it. Now, their thoughts change every 10 seconds. So just because they tweet something emotional during that time, that doesn't matter. It gives the other team motivation, but our team was motivated to play Texas. Texas outplayed us, outcompeted us, they outcoached us, they outphysicaled us. They did a lot of things better than us, and I think you give Tom credit.
Again, in the center of the room.
Bulldog Illustrated. It seemed like everything kind of steamrolled there. Jake's knee touching the ground and then the fumble on the 12-yard line. It just seemed like everything could go wrong. It seemed went wrong in that first quarter, and it got you in that tough hole, didn't it?
It did, and those are all things that we controlled. You know what I mean? We controlled the snap. We controlled Jake's knee. We control whether we possess the ball or not because people try to take it from you. But those are all things that you got to be resilient about and go out and overcome. And if you prepare right, and you go out there and play your best football game, you don't have those errors and things. And you got to be able to overcome those sometimes. You think about this year, we didn't have a start of a game similar to like that really all year. So you got to do a better job preparing our players for that and go out and execute.
Again, right down here.
Dan Legge again. Jake, it took you a little bit of time to get rolling. Was that Texas? Was that y'all, the receivers? Was it everything?
It was tough. They did a really good job game planning for us. They had an entire month to do so, and they were showing a lot of different looks. They were, constantly mixing stuff up. Did a really good job with some eye violation stuff, and showing you one thing one way and bringing it from the other. But I just think, at the beginning, they game planned really well. They showed us what that game plan was, in those first couple of drives, but we just couldn't make adjustments quick enough, really to capitalize on that.
In the back on the right, please.
Dave Piper, Zoom Radio, Thomaston, Georgia. Coach, you got a young roster. What do you hope your young players will take away from these last two games?
Well, I hope they learn that you better show up to play every game because the teams that you're playing at the end of the year are all capable of topping you. And, it's a value. We've played in some really incredible venues with the SEC Championship and then this Sugar Bowl, the All-State Sugar Bowl. They're incredible venues, and there's a lot of young players out there that are growing and getting better. I just hope that this group buys in with really good leadership, especially the youth on the team, and grows into really good leaders. We've got to have great leadership moving forward to get where we want to go. And, I think the guys leaving have set a legacy and set a standard. Now we've got to raise that standard. And we've got to learn from the fact that when you go to play a game 30 days later, you got to be at your best. And, we didn't play our best game tonight, but you got to give Texas a lot of credit because they made it that way.
Again, down here.
Jonathan, what will your legacy be at Georgia after this 4 years?
I think it's simple. Georgia's heading in a different direction than it was, a couple years back. And I can say I was a part of that group that laid the foundation for that. You can obviously see that the standard is changing. Despite today, tough loss, played a good physical team, but the culture of Georgia is becoming something greater than it ever was. And I think it'll continue to do that way beyond when I'm going. But I was the start of it, and that's big for me. I'm grateful to be that. I'm grateful that the school, allowed me to be there and, took a chance on me and picked me as a leader for this team and just to get this thing started off in the right way.
Stay on the right side of the room.
Dan Matthews again. Jake, with the running game, a lot of your offense is predicated on that success. What were they able to do to take that away from you guys, or was it something that maybe you guys weren't able to execute?
First thing, they were very physical up front. That's one obstacle you have to climb over. And the next thing, they were slanting this way and that way, shooting multiple gaps, and we just had a tough time, trying to figure out, which way they're moving and trying to cut guys out of gaps. It was tough, and we just didn't really do a good job of being physical up front, and it kind of hurt us with not being able to run the football.
Back in the center of the room.
Dean, look again, Kirby. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher his name, but David Wilson, I think, played tonight for the first time at Georgia.
Did. And
played a lot. How did y'all get him ready for that, and what were the expectations coming in?
Well, we wanted him to play all year, and I give the kid a lot of credit. He's been frustrated, and he wanted to play. He had the ACL injury in the spring. We thought he was going to be a really good player, and he was cleared somewhere around the Florida week. But you can't just get cleared and magically go out there and play. I mean, it was similar to Ben's injury. It's an injury where you got to take some time and get over it. And we thought with a 30-day window that if we're going to get where we want to go as a program and football team, we've got to get bigger at the nickel star. We got to get more athletic and be able to play, heavier guy. He's 200 pounds. I can't say how he played tonight because I didn't get to see a lot of it. But we were going to share he and Tyreek actually got injured during the game, so there's another guy out. So Devon just had to play the whole time. But I thought he competed hard, and he was excited to go out there and play.
Shift over to the left side of the room.
Kirby, there was a report that you benched a couple starters during practice during the week because of lack of effort. Can you comment on that? And also, MECOLE HARDMAN said he thought the energy level of a bunch of guys seemed to be down at the start of the game. Could you just also comment on that? And
I missed the second part.
MECOLE HARDMAN said he thought the energy level of some players was not where it should be at the outset of the game.
Yeah, I didn't feel that way. I thought the energy level was really good at the start of the game in the locker room. The guys were fired up. They were going. We sold playing to a standard and making a statement, and we didn't do that. We were going to play for each other's back, and the guys that we wanted to go out there and play for were the guys that they're seniors. So we obviously didn't do that well. I mean, we didn't come out and start very fast. And like I said before you came in, I think we didn't have the kind of start that we have in most games. It was like the exact opposite. Then the beginning question was, did I bench any starters? No, I didn't. I thought our guys practiced really well leading up to the game. Since we came to the bowl site, they practiced well. We had a lot of starters injured. You know what I mean? Like, we had guys out, but there was nobody that got benched that was a starter. No, there's nobody that we benched. If it was a non-starter, how do you bench him? I don't understand. Oh, no, I didn't. I certainly didn't feel that way. Nobody. I mean, DeAndre Walker didn't play tonight, but DeAndre Walker's been injured. I don't know if you're speculating about him. I don't know who you're asking about, but. No, I didn't think so. We did a lot of. We felt like it was important to practice shorter and practice good on good, because the look you get from the scout team late in the year is not real good, and kids get lethargic and they get lazy and you get sloppy. So we did higher quality work with less quantity and got more competitive. So we had all our starters out there going against each other.
Back to the center of the room.
Murray Poole again. Jonathan, did our fast pace of the Texas offense, y'all think y'all were pretty well prepared for that? And also Ellinger, the quarterback, he was kind of hard to him up. Did bringing containment and all. What would you say about both of those things?
We handled the tempos pretty well. He's a good quarterback. Can't take that away from him. He had 3 rushing touchdowns. He's a good runner. We talked about it all week. He's a running back that can throw the ball. We didn't contain. We didn't have a level pass rush most of the times, and we didn't get him on the ground. When you don't do that, it makes plays.
Kirby, this Dean Legge again, Kirby. What do you think happened with DeAndre at the beginning of the game? I've not seen him fumble like that in his time at Georgia.
It happens, guys. I mean, I don't know. You want to say that he was wanting to fumble? I mean, one of them, the guy literally stripped it out. It was a great strip. And we pride ourselves. We're one of the teams in the country that we start half our practices with the defensive players ripping at the ball and the offensive player. And the kid ripped the ball out. The second one, he put his helmet right on that ball. And that one, you almost say, man, that was a weird hit. That guy, he spiked and hit him right on the ball, and the ball shot out. The first one, he got stripped out. Can't happen. And I know DeAndre's just as disappointed as anybody, and we didn't play with the same energy level that we usually do, and that's a lot of credit to Texas, because they were in our backfield. Several times they penetrated and moved quick, and we weren't able to handle the penetration. And when they're in your backfield, that's how they cause fumbles.
Stay on the right-hand side of the room, right down here.
Dan Matthews again. 2-part question for you, Jake. One, do you feel like you guys were able to flush away the loss in Atlanta before even coming here? And the other part of it is, can you guys bounce back from this during an off season?
So the first part, no, I don't think it bothers. I think we flushed it. We went back to work. We realized, what had, got us to this point, and that's going to work, that's grinding, and really going hard at practice. And, I thought leading up to, this game, we practiced really well and had a lot of good things in, just didn't play well today. And the second part of that question was,
can you just turn the page from this during an off season going into next year?
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely going to do that. Myself, a couple other of these leaders are going to step up, and we're going to have a great off season. Come back better than ever. And I'm fired up for it, and can't wait for it.
Any other questions for Coach Smart or the student athletes? Gentlemen, thank you.
So welcome back here live in New Orleans in this special edition of DawgNation Daily. You hear there from Georgia coach Kirby Smart, Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm, and Jonathan Ledbetter on a lot of subjects about what went wrong for Georgia in its 28-21 loss to Texas in the Sugar Bowl. We're going to hear from a lot more Georgia players coming up, including in just a moment Georgia safety J.R. Reed. We'll address the issue facing Reed about whether or not he's going to contemplate going to the NFL draft. Reed's going to give us an update on his cousin, D'Angelo Gibbs. Those of you who are fans of Gibbs are certainly going to want to hear what Reed has to say about that. Reed also talks about the challenge of playing in the Georgia secondary last night without DeAndre Baker. All of that coming up with one of the Georgia defensive leaders, J.R. Reed, here in just a moment. Before that, though, from New Orleans, I want to go around the doghouse, presented today by Engineered Solutions of Georgia. And I want to respond back to something you just heard that Kirby Smart press conference. You heard the question posed to Smart from the ESPN telecast of the game, Holly Rose, saying that Smart had told her during the week that several Georgia players were benched during practice. Now, to be honest with you, I don't know what the phrase benched during practice necessarily means, but Georgia starters apparently had kind of run afoul of Kirby Smart. He was not satisfied with the effort during practice. That's apparently what he told the broadcast crew during the game last night, but refuted those claims in the press conference last night. Stuff like that, I believe, has the potential of becoming a problem for Smart, because one of two things would seem obviously true here. He's either lying during the press conference or he's accusing Holly Rowe of lying on the ESPN telecast last night. Both those things can't be true. One or the other is wrong. And for those of you who are not aware of how the broadcast process typically works, the television crew gets a long time to meet with the coach before a game, especially for a Sugar Bowl like this. It's part of the TV contract that the conference has with the leagues, or the sport has with the league. So Kirby Smart is a lot more unfettered and a lot more open and candid in these private conversations with the television crew. They then use those words. It's not off the record. They use those words to provide color to the television broadcast. So apparently Kirby Smart, if we're to believe Holly Rowe's words here, had mentioned that to the broadcast crew, that he had been dissatisfied with practice. Then last night in the post-game press conference, he acted as if that wasn't true. The honest truth is, none of us know what the real truth is here, because we're not there at practice behind closed doors, and we're not privy to the private conversations that Smart has with Rowe. But I would caution Kirby Smart to be really careful about saying one thing to one person and something else to another person. Part of the leadership requires honesty to a certain respect, and when it comes to an issue like this about how well Georgia prepared leading up to the Sugar Bowl, there's a natural curiosity about that, and whatever Kirby Smart's line is going to be, he needs to make sure he uses it with everyone that he speaks to about this. We'll have a lot more coming up for you later on. We'll hear from MECOLE HARDMAN. We'll hear from Elijah Holyfield. A lot of Georgia players reacting to the loss. But now, here as we're around the doghouse, presented by Engineered Solutions of Georgia, let me remind you that whatever you're dealing with in your house, whether it be a cracked foundation, a damp crawl space, a wet basement, and here today in New Orleans, you can look around me and see it is cold and damp and rainy. It's a very good day to be thinking about Engineered Solutions of Georgia. And if you've got any of those things around your house, then you're going to want to give them a call, 678-ESOG now. That number, once again, 678-ESOG now, and let their basement waterproofing experts come over and take care of you. They'll help with your foundation. They'll get you back up and running. They're the only foundation repair company the DawgNation would trust, because they're the only ones that have a full-time engineer on staff. So if you got an issue like that you're dealing with in your home, damp basement, cracked foundation, anything along those lines, Engineered Solutions of Georgia will take good care of you. Give them a call at 678-ESOG now. All right, as this live DawgNation Daily continues from New Orleans with post-game coverage presented by Northside Hospital, let's go to the Georgia locker room last night. Let's get a chance to hear in from J.R. Reed. As I said, a lot of updates from Reed, including his cousin D'Angelo Gibbs, Reed's potential future in the NFL, what went wrong against Texas, and what was it like playing in the secondary without DeAndre Baker? A wide-ranging conversation with Reed, who was pretty candid last night. I hope you enjoy that as part of a special DawgNation Daily here today with Northside Hospital post-game coverage. Obviously, Ellinger, the Texas quarterback, caused a lot of problems to your defense tonight. What was the challenge specifically in facing a guy like that can do with his arms and his legs?
I just think that he extended the play a lot more with his legs than anything. And I think, we had him down in coverage, but the way he can just get out of the tackles and get out of the pocket and run the ball and extend the play, especially in the red area, caused a lot of problems.
At the end of the game, you hear a lot of the Texas fans, they're mocking the SEC with the SEC chant. They're saying overrated. When a big high-profile SEC team such as Georgia plays a game like this, do you guys feel an extra responsibility not just to play for the Georgia G, but that SEC and the image that a lot of folks have about this conference and where its place in college football is?
Not really. We played for the G and we played for our seniors today, and we couldn't get the win for those guys. And that's really sad for us. We really wanted to win for those guys, but we don't play for the SEC and all the other hype stuff, and we don't care about that. We play for this right here, and those guys in the locker room that won't be able to play ever again for Georgia.
There's some social media chatter that on the television broadcast it was mentioned that there was some sort of issue at practice with starters and that Kirby Smart was dissatisfied with some of the performance of the starters during practice. What can you tell us about that?
I just think that when you lose a game like this, anybody will come up with any rumors. No starters were benched in practice at all. You'll hear another rumor tomorrow that someone did this and Coach Smart wasn't happy about that. We practiced hard throughout this whole week. No one was benched. Coach Smart's always on us. Coach Smart is always on us throughout the season. So if he pulled someone out just because they didn't do good, it wasn't that they were benched or anything. It was that, you got to get refocused and put them back in. But he never benched anybody. So, scratch that rumor out.
To change the subject here for a moment, obviously there's a lot of folks concerned about some other news that we heard leading up to the bowl game, which is the status of D'Angelo Gibbs, a guy that you obviously know really well, not with the team right now. What can you tell us about D'Angelo? What may be next for him from a football standpoint?
Whatever he wants to be next. It's up to him, and the sky's the limit for that kid. My cousin, I love him to death. The sky's the limit. He's a kid, people say has no ceiling, and, whatever he puts his mind to do, he can do it.
There's obviously a lot of guys on this team thinking about their future, maybe the NFL, and you're one of those guys. How much thought have you been able to put into the idea that maybe you might consider a move to the NFL draft?
I haven't really thought about it at all. I've been focused on Texas, and now since the game ended, I'm going to talk to my family, take some time off, and get refocused and make a decision.
Given the fact that so many guys have NFL decisions, Justin Fields is obviously weighing the idea of a transfer, the status of DeAndre Baker, is that just too many distractions for one team to deal with leading into a bowl game like this?
Not at all. We knew what we were coming into. Excuse me. Those guys are going to sit out, who really, what can you do about that? You got to focus. It's a next man up league. So this younger guys got to step up. Their season starts now. Justin, might leave. That's what's going to happen in certain teams. Guys transfer all the time. Guys with smaller stature than Justin transfer all the time, and no one cares. So, guys transfer all the time. Whatever Justin's decision is, I'm behind him 100% if he stays or leaves. And then Baker's decision, if he wanted to play, I'm behind it. If he wanted to sit down, I'm behind it. I don't think that was a distraction at all for our team. It's always next man up, who's ready to play.
From a practical standpoint, what was it like playing without Baker tonight? Was it hard to get used to not having 18 on the field with you guys?
Not at all, because we practiced it for 31 days, so I was used to it.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, no problem.
So interesting stuff there with Georgia safety J.R. Reed. Obviously, a lot of Georgia fans curious to find out what's next for D'Angelo Gibbs, Reed's cousin. It was nice to hear Reed speaking about him there for a moment. And on the subject of DeAndre Baker not playing with the Georgia secondary, Reed talks as if Georgia was certainly prepared for that contingency with Baker deciding not to play here. I think the question that some are going to have is, when you look at the totality of the bowl season around college football, you saw a lot of teams who had players sit out. The team struggled in the bowl game, and sometimes you can maybe draw a line to the absence of a draft-eligible player, and maybe sometimes it was more about an intangible issue of if one player's focus wasn't on the bowl, did that become a contagion that affected other players in the roster? Now, the one, I guess, counterexample to that is LSU, which went out and beat UCF yesterday without Greedy Williams. It's an outstanding cornerback. But for Georgia, the absence of DeAndre Baker, even though the Georgia secondary for the most part didn't seem to be ill-affected by that, is that a mood that impacted the entirety of the locker room? I mean, especially when you add into that the status of Justin Fields, who all but certainly seems to be gone. In fact, he visually was gone when the game was over last night, and I didn't see him leave the field, leading me to believe he may have left the field before the game. One way or another, we just didn't see Justin Fields after the game last night. So with that issue with DeAndre Baker and with some of those things, did that kind of creep into the Georgia psyche last night? And is that part of the explanation for why Georgia was unrecognizable to many of its fans last night, losing in embarrassing fashion? Georgia does come back to try to make it somewhat close, but 28-21 was the final there, and we're doing our part to break this all down as part of our Northside Hospital post-game coverage here on DawgNation Daily. And speaking of my friends at Northside Hospital, you know, they have 10 locations in the Atlanta area. There is one close to you wherever you are. So if you've got an injury that you need to be taken care of, or if you want to prevent an injury from taking place, or if you just want to perform better in your athletic field of choice, well, Northside Hospital sports medicine experts can take good care of you. So check them out online at sportsmedicine.northside.com. The website, once again, sportsmedicine.northside.com, or give them a call at 1-855-NH-SPORT, 1-855-NH-SPORT. Okay, so one of the things I want to do right now is I want to give you a chance to hear from Georgia wide receiver MECOLE HARDMAN. Now, the big issue that we addressed last night with our Northside Hospital post-game show, and a big topic of conversation on social media and the forum at forum.dawgnation.com, the very outspoken behavior by a lot of Georgia players on Saturday night. Looking at the way that Notre Dame and Oklahoma played in the national semifinals, Georgia, many players seem to take that as a validation that Georgia should have been in the Final Four. And we're outspoken about that on Twitter. A lot of the national media did not like that. A lot of opposing fans didn't like that. But really even Georgia fans close to making the college football playoff and could have won it all. How do you think your team will be remembered this season?
I don't know how we'll be remembered. You know, we just lost, so that's definitely going to be remembered that we lost the Sugar Bowl. But I just want everybody, you know, that's listening, you know, they remember us like as a team that was good, that was great, that had that never reached their potential in the season at all. I think we still had a lot of improvement to do throughout the season, you know. And but I just want to remember as a team that played hard, that fought hard, played together, you know, and left it all on the field.
You were one of the guys who was tweeting on Saturday night about the college football playoff. You regret that tweet at all?
I don't have no regrets in this life, you know. I think y'all know we should have been top 4 as well to this day. So I don't think nothing changed about that. But like I said, those tweets come with consequences. And a lot of people going to say a lot of things about those tweets about we should have been worried about Texas or things of that nature. But we're not worried about that. And, you know, we just want to, you know, get through this loss, man, and take it to the chin like we supposed to, you know.
Did you give them the proper respect, Texas?
Yeah, we definitely respect them. No doubt about it. We respect all the opponents, and we're not going to go in there and not respect them. So we gave them respect, and they came on and played great. So.
One of the sentences out there is, for Texas, this was a Super Bowl. For Georgia, this was a consolation game. Is that the way your team viewed this, a consolation for the game that you would have rather been in?
Nah, I mean, we here. So, I mean, there's no point in like dwelling on the past, you know. When we here. We got to play our game, you know. We can't just go back and change the past, you know. But nah, I guess Texas probably looked at this game bigger than we did, maybe. But nah, we still won't look at it as another game on the schedule, and we wanted to win, but we didn't get the outcome.
Did Coach Smart have any reaction to you and your teammates being so outspoken on Saturday?
No, not really. You know, we kids, we really men, but at the end of the day, we can do what we want to do, and we tweeted that and on our own. So he didn't push that to tell us to do whatever. He didn't tell us to do anything. We just did it on our own. So, but he did have some things to say about it, but it wasn't nothing mean or anything of that nature. It's just more of like, yeah, y'all tweeted that, so now y'all got to live with the consequences come with it if you win or you lose. So
you're obviously facing an NFL decision. Any announcement you want to make in that regard?
I'm undecided right now on my future. You know, I got a week to decide that, and I'm going to get with my family, we're going to talk, and then, you know, I'll let y'all know.
What's going to stick most about this game?
What's going to stick out most?
With you, what's going to hurt the most? What's going to get on your
We didn't bring the singers out on top. We didn't finish, and they're going to hurt the most. Especially with Terry, in the room, in the receiving room, getting so close with him because he's like my brother. He is my brother, and seeing him, the look on his face, you'll never forget that his last game. So I wish we could just brought the seniors out on top.
Why do you think this team had so much issues tonight, struggling to the tone offensively, especially in the ground game, just 72 yards on the ground?
Yeah, I don't know that. Your guess, your opinion better than mine, man. They was getting pressure. They was doing some crazy blitzes that we probably haven't seen. I don't know, but they played a great game. I can't say anything bad about them.
When you make as many mistakes as you did as a team, how hard is that?
It's hard. When you make mistakes, they made us pay for it. They had a great offense behind their defense, and they got a hell of a quarterback back there, doing his thing. So the mistakes we made, they capitalized on it, man. And but we definitely could have cleaned up on them and tried to limit them. But at the end of the day, they came out with a win.
Did the offense know before the game that Justin Fields was not going to play?
I don't have no control over that. That's coaches. If they want to put them in, they put them in. If they don't, they don't. I have no control. I'm out there just playing, doing my role. So.
Appreciate it.
So that's Georgia wide receiver MECOLE HARDMAN. I think almost every Georgia fan thinks a lot of the stuff that was tweeted on Saturday night was a mistake. And frankly, Georgia fans were saying that before the game. This is not like hindsight, Georgia lost, and so now therefore let's go back and find a reason. We've done a lot of shows here from New Orleans over the last couple of days, and in all these shows building up to this, I was really struck by just how many Georgia fans did not like the outspoken nature of Georgia players on Saturday night. So from HARDMAN's standpoint, I think the tweet that he tweeted among also with the rest of his teammates who were kind of engaged in the same behavior, I think it was a mistake. Yet I think that MECOLE HARDMAN's going to learn from this mistake. And I think if you're a Georgia fan, the one thing that you do feel really good about is the fact that HARDMAN stood there and took the medicine on that, owned the scenario. And I think that if you're a Georgia fan, you at least appreciate that he could have ducked out the back door last night and hidden from this kind of stuff. He could have pretended that it didn't happen. But frankly, HARDMAN took it head on. And I think Georgia fans ought to respect him a lot for doing that. We're going to hear from Elijah Holyfield in just a minute, who's kind of a part of some of the same stuff. And just like HARDMAN a moment ago, we also asked Holyfield about his upcoming NFL decision. You'll hear that. First, though, let me pause for our radio audience. We are live in New Orleans for a special edition of DawgNation Daily with Northside Hospital post-game coverage, and we've got plenty more coming up for you right after this. And, of course, here on DawgNation Daily from New Orleans, thank you so much for being a part of this. And for those of you that could not stay up last night to kind of catch up on everything that happened post-game, we appreciate you giving us a chance to bring all of this to you. I will say that if you'll allow us to, that in a couple of minutes here, we're going to do something a little bit different. Another interview that we're going to share before we're done today is about a very different kind of subject, but it's one I think that's appropriate to finish with on a day like this, where, let's face it, there's a lot of negativity to go around about the way that Georgia played. But for a lot of Georgia seniors, they signed off last night on their Georgia careers, and that's an emotional moment. It was especially emotional for Georgia linebacker Nate Patrick, who has overcome a lot just to be able to keep that Georgia uniform on. I really enjoyed our conversation last night with Patrick as he talked about the different side of Kirby Smart. You see the intense coach. You see the guy who's all about trying to get better on the field. But what about the guy that's trying to make you a better man in life? What about the guy that's trying to be a mentor to you, maybe even a father figure for some of these players? Patrick told that story and also reflected on what these 4 years at Georgia meant to him and what he thinks Georgia's going to do in the future to get over that hump and finally win a national championship. If you're looking for a little dose of positivity on an otherwise pretty miserable day, Nate Patrick will give that to us coming up in just a moment. I do, though, want to keep the current conversation going here because I do think that the way this Sugar Bowl is going to be remembered by a lot of folks outside DawgNation, and frankly, for a lot of the fans within the bubble of DawgNation as well, as a game in which Georgia had a lot of big talk leading into the game and really did very little to back that up. I mentioned before that Georgia brand, which has grown and become quite significant over the last couple of years, probably a little bit of a dent, a little bit of a tarnish in that today. It'll be repaired. It'll be fixed. And by the time the 2019 season kicks off, Georgia's going to have all kinds of opportunities to go back out and remind folks what Georgia football is all about. As of right now, though, let's face it, Georgia's going to be the butt of a lot of jokes. There was the mocking SEC chant from Texas fans last night, the thunderous chant of overrated that rang out for several minutes, seemingly, inside the Superdome last night. Georgia's going to hear a bunch of that. It's not just going to be from Texas fans. It's going to be from those rival SEC fans who think Georgia's trying to bite off a little too much too quick, and from some of the national media that's already starting to swirl because, let's face it, there's a little bit of an anti-SEC fatigue thing going on anyway, and Georgia certainly gives fodder for the folks who say, how about we have a little less of the SEC in our lives? Georgia's going to have to deal with some of that for right now. And some of the tweets from some of the Georgia players on Saturday don't really help all of that. We heard from MECOLE HARDMAN a moment ago on his issue with that and what he said and what he did. Elijah Holyfield was also a part of that too. He had the laughing emoji. They got picked up by some of the college football analysts and became part of the fodder on Saturday night. Well, Holyfield talked about that. He also talked about his upcoming NFL decision. Here's a little bit from Georgia running back Elijah Holyfield as a part of our Northside Hospital post-game coverage here live today from New Orleans on DawgNation Daily.
Not the conversation that you want to be having here. What was the message in the locker room after the game about what just unfolded?
It's just you can't go out there and make those type of mistakes versus a good team.
You tweeted the other night a laughing emoji that some people seem to be some complaints about Georgia not being included in the playoff. Is that a tweet that you regret now, and do you feel like that maybe put extra pressure on Georgia to come out and validate its season with how it played tonight?
No, I don't regret anything I did. I felt the way I felt, and I had to go out here and we lost, and I got to take it like that.
Do you think that Texas got Georgia's best shot tonight? Was this a game that Georgia wanted to play in?
No, we didn't play our best game, but Texas is a good ball club, and it's not about who's the better team. It's about who plays better that day, and they played better than us today.
You've obviously got a big decision facing you. Any announcements you want to make about what your future is going to be?
No, I'm not sure.
Thanks, Elijah.
No problem.
Georgia running back Elijah Holyfield, who, by the way, does go over 1,000 yards for season last night, giving Georgia another season, consecutive year of a running back tandem going over 1,000 yards rushing. That's one of the brief positive, if you're looking for anything to hold on to here for the positive from last night. Holyfield getting over that 1,000-yard mark and joining DeAndre Swift, just like Chubb and Michelle had done a season ago. Pretty impressive stuff. I think overall one of the things that's going to be kind of curious for a lot of Georgia fans is exactly why the running game wasn't more a part of the game than it was last night. You heard Jake Fromm talk about this a little earlier, that they were out-physicaled up front at the line of scrimmage. That certainly seemed to be what we all saw taking place. But why was that? Why did this game feel like such a callback to what happened, once again, in the state of Louisiana against LSU in the month of October? A lot of questions like that are really difficult to answer. DeAndre Swift was not a big part of this game. 8 carries for 12 yards. I believe his ultimate stat line is going to be, at least in terms of running the football, did have a couple of catches. That's hard to understand there. And now Georgia fans will wait to find out what's next for Holyfield. Does he go on to the NFL? For Georgia fans who follow recruiting, they know that a lot of the 2019 running backs certainly think Holyfield's going to come back. Noah Cain told DawgNation recently that factored into his decision to go to Penn State, and you can presume that Trey Sanders, the 5-star running back, felt much the same way for why he chose Alabama instead of UGA. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I do want to keep my promise to you here as we continue to do Northside Hospital post-game coverage. By the way, check out Northside Hospital online at sportsmedicine.northside.com or give them a call at 1-855-NH-SPORT. I told you we would try to do something a little positive here as we get ready to move towards the conclusion of our broadcast. I think that one of the things that Kirby Smart's proven to be very good at is giving second chances to players and then allowing them to be put into a position where they have a chance to succeed with that additional opportunity. An example of that's Jonathan Ledbetter, who overcame a lot to become one of the true leaders for Georgia this season. And another example of that is Georgia linebacker Natrez Patrick. If you want to go back to almost a full year ago, or a little bit more than a full year ago now, it seemed like his Georgia career might be done. Yet he did work his way back into the team, got a chance to wear that uniform this season, and was a part of the leadership for this program. Natrez Patrick's Georgia career came to an end last night. He spent some time with us to reflect on what it's all meant to him and where he thinks the program goes from here. If you're looking for something to feel a little bit better about today, maybe Natrez Patrick will help you with that here on DawgNation Daily.
Georgia linebacker Natrez Patrick. Natrez, this is obviously a challenging time for you as you reflect back on your career at Georgia and the things you've overcome to be standing in this spot and talking to us right now. When you think about wearing the Georgia uniform and what this program has meant to you, what are your thoughts right now?
Georgia means everything to me. The coaches, the program, the players, the fans, everybody stuck up for me and was in my corner when they didn't have to be. So I just want to thank you for that, thank DawgNation for that. But it's hard, man. It's hard when these guys around you put so much work in. It's hard when they care so much about this and we come up short. But, I mean, that's the reality. Texas outplayed us today.
Would you mind taking us behind the scenes here for a moment? Because obviously we see the TV version of Kirby Smart, the red face and the intensity, but behind the scenes you've seen a different version of him, someone, as you said, that stuck by you and gave you another chance, and you've made the most of that that additional opportunity. What's he like in those private, quiet moments, and when it's not screaming and yelling and being a coach, but maybe being a mentor and someone that gives you some guidance in life? What's that version of Kirby Smart like?
He's a realist. He cares. You can genuinely, truly tell that he cares. He cares about his players. And I feel like that goes into why he coaches so hard, does everything the way he does it. But it's different, man. He tries to be there for you, tries to be your mentor, put you in the best positions, does everything in his power to help you. And I personally want to say thank him for everything he's done for me. But he's just somebody that he'll never turn your back on you. He'll never turn your back on you.
I don't mean to bring up a disappointing subject, but when the incident happened last December, did you think there was a chance that you wouldn't wear the Georgia uniform again at that point?
There's a number of things running through my head, but I mean, that was then. This is now. We worry about this. We worry about now. We worry about the Sugar Bowl, and we worry about now.
Yeah, certainly. I know it must fill you with a great sense of pride to know that you're able to overcome all of that and be in this point where you are right now.
Of course.
When you look, and obviously one of the fun things during a season is to see the former players come back, and you're, as fans now, rooting on the current Georgia team, and that'll be you for many years to come. How close do you think this team is to getting over the hump? A goal that you guys could have accomplished in 2018. You're very close to doing that. The 2019 team presumably is going to be really close as well. How close do you think this team is, and what do you think is missing? What do you think still needs to happen to get Georgia across that line, back in the college football playoff, and hoisting that national championship trophy?
I feel like those guys are right at the peak. They're right at the peak, the brinks of what greatness could be. I feel like once everybody starts doing everything right all the time, because we have a great group of guys. We have a great group of guys that buys in, that buys. But when everybody holds everybody accountable and does everything right all the time, like, I just feel like it'll push the team over that hump.
And then, I guess, final thing for you. You mentioned, the focus on what just happened tonight. As a senior leader, a guy that's been around the block a few times, did you have a sense coming into the game that maybe the focus and the intensity wasn't where it needed to be?
Not at all. Not at all. Going into it, we prepared great. We had good practices. Bold practices were good practices. I felt that guys were locked in during those practices, and I don't feel that was a fact. I just felt like Texas outplayed Georgia today.
I know.
As bad as that, it's crazy to me to say, but that's the reality of things. Georgia, they outplayed us today.
Well, Georgia fans, we're standing here with us right now. They thank you for a great career, so I'll do that on their behalf. I know a lot of Georgia fans have enjoyed watching you. They'll look forward to seeing where you go next in life.
I appreciate that. Thank you, DawgNation, for everything.
All right, so I really enjoyed that conversation with Natrez Patrick, who, I think is an impressive young man. I know he's got a really bright future in life ahead of him, and I know he will be back on the sidelines and in the stands cheering on those Georgia players in the future. I love watching the ex-players come back on campus and the pride that fills their faces. They get a chance to see the new team, the new players wearing the same uniform they wore, and I know we'll see a lot of that from Natrez Patrick in the future. We're going to get ready to sign off in just a moment with our radio audience and our podcast audience. We'll take some more questions here live on video. Before we do that, let me take a second to address what I know has been a hot topic in the comment section all day long, and we'll do more video comments on this coming up in just a moment, and that's Justin Fields' status. Fields doesn't play last night, but I think it's important to remember the reason why Fields doesn't play is because he's about to transfer. I think he's by all indications, leaving the program. We'll obviously talk more about Fields in the days ahead, but I think that Georgia went into the Sugar Bowl last night knowing that Fields was not going to be a big part of the storyline of what happened. But there's obviously plenty more to break down from this game. We'll do a lot of that this week here around DawgNation, and including tomorrow back live in Atlanta for DawgNation Daily, and, of course, at DawgNation.com as well. We've got more video comments coming, but for our podcast and radio audience, we'll see you tomorrow right here on DawgNation Daily. And back here on video, let's take some time to take a few more of your comments and get some thoughts on everything that you have to say there. Of course, as we said, we can talk about Justin Fields if you want. Obviously, seemingly you do want to. It certainly seems obvious now that Fields is leaving. Y'all, this was his choice. He chose to come to Georgia, chose to engage in a quarterback competition with a quarterback that played as well as Jake Fromm played last year. And presumably, he thought winning the starting quarterback job was going to be easy. When it turned out to be hard, it now seems that Fields is going to choose to go somewhere else. Why would you play a guy who's contemplating all of that in this game last night for Georgia? Fields may have been with the team, but all he was getting was a free vacation in New Orleans. He was not, I think, ever going to play in this game. I'm not even sure he would have played if Fromm had gotten hurt. That's just the fact. This was a situation where, for both parties involved, Fields included, they were going through the motions to do the one final act that needs to be done in a Georgia uniform, and it's on to the next thing for Justin Fields and on to the next thing for Georgia. I know that's really disappointing to a lot of people who really like Justin Fields. I get that. I've said before, I wish that Justin Fields would be on this team for 2019. I think Georgia needs more quarterback depth. I think that Fields can provide it. But, y'all, Jake Fromm is Georgia's starting quarterback. Last night was not a great night for Fromm. It was not a great night for the Georgia offense. That doesn't change the fact that Jake Fromm earned this job over the course of the season with the way that he played against Florida, with the way that he played against Kentucky, with the way that he played, even a losing effort against Alabama. You don't put that quarterback on the bench. Fromm's still got a chance, a very good chance to be a first-round draft pick in either the 2020 or 2021 NFL draft, and he's going to be on the relatively short list of Heisman favorites for next season. So the quarterback situation for many of you is not playing out the way that you wanted it to. That's obviously apparent from the comment section here. We'll let you sound off and weigh in on all of that. But Fields was not an option to play last night. Let me do this. Let me do a few Facebook comments, and then I'll switch phones here and do some YouTube comments, if you don't mind, before we get ready to wrap up. Our buddy Connor Riley will help us out with all of that. So let me get some comments here. Mark Davis says, I'm disappointed with the outcome of the game. It is just a game. I think the Dogs have a bright future. Yeah, Mark, I think it's probably true that Georgia has a bright future as well, but I do think it is fair to say that this game from Georgia does show that there is still a lot to work on, that this is not a situation where Kirby Smart is leading Georgia onto the plane of college football, some sort of conquering hero, and then taking over this sport's going to be an easy thing to do. Last night was a setback that reminds you that actually getting over the hump, even getting back to the college football playoff, is certainly a difficult challenge. There have been a lot of young coaches, a lot of programs that thought they were also on the doorstep of greatness. Tom Herman in Texas, they feel the same thing right now, by the way. So I think what last night proves to you is that this all has to be earned. Georgia's not entitled to anything. It doesn't inherit anything. This is go out and work and take for yourself what you can get. And the business of doing that is going to begin here as the conclusion of the 2019 recruiting cycle looms, and then the offseason that's going to lead to a very, very important 2019 season for the Georgia Bulldogs as well. Billy Mortimer says you can't change the minds of the haters. Listen, I think the one thing that we're not even going to give much of a spotlight to is a so-called hater. It's one thing to have an opinion. We love sharing opinions here. We love the back and forth. But if your opinion about one Georgia player requires you to trash another one, that's just the kind of thing that we're not going to do a whole bunch of here on DawgNation Daily. Christina Driver says Texas rattled them and got in their heads. I think to a certain extent, Christina's kind of right about that, in that, Kirby Smart in his post-game press conference, and remarks, you heard this yourself off the top of our program today, was very quick to point out that Texas wanted it more than Georgia did. So you've got that as an issue to begin with. And then you've got the scenario where at the very beginning of the game, it's this huge flurry. Texas comes right down the field and scores, and then he gets the benefit of the short field because of the Jake Camarda blunder with putting his knee down before the punt. If you look, and I wrote about this in the forum last night at forum.dawgnation.com, Texas had 3 drives in the first half that came with very short field position. It was midfield for one, and it was 2 others inside the Georgia 30 to start the possession. Out of that, Texas gets 10 points. So if you really think about it, the Georgia defense actually did a pretty good job of limiting Texas, given the fact they had 3 instances of, I think, 5 total possessions in the first half where the Longhorns had really short field position to start with. The point is, though, because of those short fields, because of the fact that Texas had some points early, it did feel like one of these things where, all of a sudden the team that probably had a little extra edge also had the advantage of coming out hot to start the game, and Georgia never seemed to recover from that. One of the things that I think is a little bit frustrating for fans, and I'll admit this as much as anybody else, there seems to be almost like 2 versions of Georgia. There's the Georgia that comes out and dominates everybody, and then there's the Georgia that kind of gets dominated. We don't see a lot of in-between from Georgia on that. I guess the few counterexamples would be the close win against Oklahoma and the 2 close losses to Alabama. Other than that, there's a lot of Georgia just walloping everybody. And, a couple times this season and the Auburn game a year ago where Georgia itself got walloped. It's really weird to think about how, wide the outcomes can be for Georgia time to time, mostly dominant wins, with occasionally a kind of blowout, uncompetitive loss. It's a weird scenario for Georgia in that note. Dalton Scott said, on a brighter note, Tyson Campbell played really well. I was excited about seeing Campbell in there as a freshman once again in the secondary. Devon Wilson got a chance to play a good bit last night. Azeez Ojulari is a name we're going to spend a lot of the offseason talking about. The Ojulari kind of showed some promise last night. Much like Wilson, he's also recovering from his own injury. Now, Wilson suffered his later than Ojulari suffered his. But Georgia was able to get a lot of young guys involved last night. These are guys that will be counted on more in the future. There's no doubt the absence of Jordan Davis really impacted Georgia last night. It's one of the reasons why I think that Sam Ehlinger was able to take advantage of some up-the-middle runs there as a quarterback because of the absence of Davis. But it was nice to see Tyson Campbell push back into some extended playing time, and for the most part responding to that pretty well. I know he was kind of tested a bit early by the Texas secondary, but overall, I should say the Texas wide receivers and Ehlinger throwing the ball. But overall, I think the Georgia secondary probably did its job. Marcinio Askew says, we dominate average teams. Duh, BA. Marcinio, you got to be fair about this for a second. I know on the heels of a loss, everything seems like it's terrible. And I'm not here to candy coat this and sugarcoat this. What Georgia did last night, I think the coaches and players leave New Orleans embarrassed by that. I do. But you got to be careful with the whole idea of, Georgia loses every big game that it plays and Georgia only dominates average teams. I mean, Florida is going to finish the season ranked solidly in the top 10 and just dominated Michigan in its bowl game, and Georgia won that game handily by 19 points. Kentucky, and you say, well, only Kentucky. Kentucky beat Penn State in its bowl game and is going to be knocking the doorstep of the top 10 here as well, certainly solidly within the top 15. Georgia won the SEC East by dominating that opponent on the road. So let's be real careful here that we don't, go too far on the one side of not giving Georgia credit for anything that it's done this season. Georgia has had some pretty impressive performances this year against good teams. Not enough to be in the college football playoff, and not enough to erase the bad taste, at least for right now, for what happened against the Longhorns. Let's make sure we give the full picture of exactly what's going on there. Let me do a few more on Facebook, then I'm going to go to YouTube here. Wesley Moss says the run defense was terrible. We talked about this before. Jordan Davis not being there really hurt. I think that DeAndre Walker, not just as a pass rusher, but someone that could have helped keep Ehlinger contained in the pocket, his presence would have been really felt last night there as well. Miriam Martin Corbin kind of upset with some of the fans. She calls them fake fans. And, yeah, listen, we've all been around the block here a couple times on this. We know that the atmosphere after a game is not a good one. Especially when a game like this, oftentimes. And so for a lot of Georgia fans, it's an ugly time here. A lot of disappointed, upset, unhappy people, and that's one of the reasons why we do exist, for better or for worse, is to provide that opportunity for folks to kind of weigh in and share their thoughts. Let me go to the YouTube comment section just for a moment. Connor, can we do that? I'm going to switch phones here and go YouTube for a moment, get our YouTube audience involved in those comments, make sure they have a chance to feel like their voice was heard here today on DawgNation Daily. By the way, huge thanks to Northside Hospital for bringing our post-game coverage to you. Make sure you check out Northside at sportsmedicine.northside.com or 1-855-NH-SPORT. We appreciate them being with us, not just here in New Orleans, but all season long, as we've been able to provide you post-game coverage here. All right, let's go into the comment section on YouTube. Pierce Rainey says, Chaney. So I have to admit, my feelings on Chaney are complicated because I was actually thinking about this last night. I'm like many of y'all. In fact, I'm probably just like all of you. Like, I'm staring at my ceiling last night in my hotel room at like 3 in the morning. I can't go to sleep just because, there's a lot of energy after a game like that. In this case, it's negative energy. I don't understand how Georgia has a couple of games where the running game just completely disappears. I mean, like, when you listen to the like from the press conference, we just got out physicaled up front. I do think there's a thing where the Georgia fan says, yeah, but why? What happened there? And in 2 crucial games for Georgia this season, Texas and LSU, 2 pretty high-profile opponents, the Georgia running game just disappeared, just absolutely evaporated into the ether, into the smoke. So, Jim Chaney, I think, deserves some of the responsibility for that, although I can't speak to the X's and O's of exactly, how and why. But Chaney does deserve some of the criticism for that. But overall, I think the issue with Chaney kind of points back to the fact that Georgia could not establish the run. Chaney always looks like a smart offensive coordinator when Georgia's running the football. And when Georgia's not running the football, it sort of seems like nothing's really working. And last night was another example of that. Georgia Peach says, yeah, me too, B.A. I cannot sleep after a bad game. I hate that I get so emotional. And I just think it's one of those things where – there's just, I don't know. It's like, I'm a part of this show where we're all sharing our opinions, and opinions from you kind of, conjure up more opinions from me, and, we're all reacting to this, we're all doing that, and then the blood starts getting boiling here because I do think there's a natural tendency to just want to figure it out, right? To want to figure out, like, what did happen, what went wrong, and, is there any kind of hope, where this gets better? And I start thinking about some of the 2019 recruits that Georgia really needs, some of the ones they're probably not going to get that could have really helped last night, and all of a sudden you just got all that, going on there. So I appreciate the fact that you're, you all are saying that. Brian Skelton says the time of possession was so lopsided, 35-25. Defense on the field way too long, lackluster offensive effort and execution, turnovers and mistakes added to the fire. Yeah, that's probably true, especially in the first half. Georgia could have really used a couple, even if they didn't necessarily lead to points or certainly not touchdowns, to just extend some of those drives would have been a pretty helpful thing there at that. Grim Tactics on YouTube says, BA, it's the usual square peg, round hole. We just don't make the adjustments we need to. I certainly think it's fair, and I certainly think that, there was a lot about, what Georgia's offensive execution looked like last night that would leave, a lot to be desired. I'm not going to push back against that really at all. Kid says that Georgia didn't have the right attitude for the game. Oh, well, better team next season. And I think the last part of that's definitely true. I do expect Georgia to be better next season. But I think where the fans are on this is that fans don't want bowl games to be meaningless, right? If you look at the conversation being had around, this Sugar Bowl last night, the people who were saying, Georgia didn't really have a reason to be here and didn't have anything to play for the most part, those are not Georgia fans making excuses for their teams. That's some pockets of the national media just making an observation about what went down. I think Georgia fans, for the most part, are like our last commenter who said, that Georgia just didn't really show up. I think fans want their team, including a Sugar Bowl like this year where it's not a college football playoff game. They want their team to show up in games like that. And last night, Georgia didn't. So even if next season is better, and I'm assuming it probably will be, there's still going to be a level of disappointment about the fact that, if nothing else, Georgia fans stayed up till 1 in the morning to see the team play as bad as they did last night, or I guess later than that in a lot of cases. James Cameron says Texas blitzes. Try a screen to Swift to counter those blitzes. Yeah, James, one of my big issues last night is that DeAndre Swift was not more a part of this game plan. I know he also fumbled a couple times there. Georgia lost one of those fumbles, but I would love to have seen a lot more from DeAndre Swift in this game. I definitely would have. Kelly Burnett says Twitter made the loss so much worse. Kelly, to be completely honest with you, I can't think of one thing Twitter's ever made better. But I know where you're coming from on that. M.A. Colbert says maybe we should have done more up-tempo. M.A., I don't know why Georgia doesn't do more of that anyway. It seems like, every time they go up-tempo near the end of the half, near the end of the game, it seems like it always works. I guess I just don't understand enough about football to know why Georgia wouldn't do that kind of thing more often. I know there's obviously a fear of losing the run and losing the ability to those big offensive linemen. Georgia likes to use really big offensive linemen. Too much up-tempo will hurt their stamina. That's probably what's at issue here. But I would invite you to go back and look at the Alabama offenses in 2014, 2015, 2016, the 3 years in which Lane Kiffin was the offensive coordinator there. The one thing that Kiffin I thought was really good at was combining some power running game in with the up-tempo offense. Alabama played pretty fast when Kiffin was his offensive coordinator, and in the midst of that, Derrick Henry still won a Heisman Trophy. So that to me is a blueprint for what I think that Georgia could do more of, and I wouldn't mind seeing Georgia play more up tempo. If nothing else, I think Fromm is more comfortable in that kind of situation because, as we've said before, Fromm's best strength is probably his quick decision making. Kelly Burnett says that was a knife to our pride. No denying it. Yeah, listen, I, as much as anybody, have been kind of touting the SEC dominance, and I got to tell you, I thought the bowl season, for the most part, especially at the top end, really kind of proved that, the SEC was a league that had a lot to brag about. And then Georgia, my team, so to speak, goes out and doesn't kind of live up to that, doesn't validate all of that. That's a little bit of a gut punch there. And for someone like me that likes to, chide, different teams and different programs on Twitter, I probably got to set a couple plays out here. I probably need to take a break from some of that stuff a little bit because right now it's Georgia. Who's going to be the butt of jokes. Double R says, BA, do you think Fromm can get the job done when everything's not going our way? The answer to that question, the short answer is yes. The long answer, though, is that, Fromm can't disappear the way that he did against LSU. Did not have a good game. Last night was kind of, reminiscent of that. And I'll be honest with you, the symbolism of Fromm playing less than his best when Justin Fields was probably wearing a Georgia uniform last night for the last time, that's not good. That's bad symbolism. I will readily admit that. I do think Fromm is better than what he showed last night, but, you've got 2 games this season, 2 of Georgia's 3 losses where, at least some of the blame for that kind of lands with Fromm. Now, Fromm also was on the, the receiving end of a few drops from some of his receivers, too. So it's a complicated picture of the entire story here, but we're not going to duck from the fact that, Fromm could have played better last night and certainly could have played better against LSU, and I think that Jake would be the first one to admit that. Stacy Goebel says, one of the last where'd Stacy go here? Actually, Stacy pulled his comment away. James Cameron says, no way Hazelwood comes to UGA with that passing performance last night. I don't know. First of all, I think there's, a very good chance that Hazelwood's already signed a letter of intent anyway. Connor Riley says he has signed a letter of intent. He would have had to have signed paperwork, like financial aid paperwork, right? But he doesn't have to have signed a letter of intent, does he? I'm talking to Connor. Okay, yeah. So Connor says Hazelwood has indicated that he signed a letter of intent. So last night's decision is not ultimately going to affect him one way or another. But I will admit, and one of the things that's really disappointing for me about this game is last night showed how much Georgia really needs a wide receiver of the caliber of Jaden Hazelwood. And I guess at this point in time, it probably does seem more likely than not that Georgia's not going to get him. And last night shows you, doesn't have to have the last name of Hazelwood. Maybe George Pickens could be that guy. Maybe Dominic Blaylock turns out to be that guy. But Georgia really needed a game-breaking receiver last night. And at least in terms of Jaden Hazelwood, that doesn't seem likely to come around now. Let me get a few more comments. Shane Bentley says, all right, Dog fans, I got to return to work. Y'all have a good rest of the day, and don't worry, the talent is coming to UGA. That's well said by Shane Bentley there in that regard, and I appreciate him weighing in on that. Let me go back over to Facebook. I'll get a couple more Facebook comments. We're going to get ready to get off the air here, and we're going to get back on the road, head our way back to Atlanta, and be back in our studios tomorrow for a normal edition of DawgNation Daily. And I think I speak for our entire DawgNation staff, certainly including my on-site producer, Connor Riley, when I say if we don't see Louisiana again for a few months, that's going to be pretty good news. It has not treated Georgia well this season, although it is the site of next year's national championship game. So maybe all can be forgiven with Sportsman's Paradise if it all kind of works out there in that regard over the course of the next year. All right, back over here on Facebook to get a few more comments before we get ready to sign off. Greg Griffith says not playoff worthy. You certainly can't dispute that after last night's game. That's one of the things I think disappoints a lot of the fans. Drew Roman says if you're a fan, you have the right to be mad and talk stuff in a loss. I don't disagree with Drew on that necessarily. I think that one of the things that DawgNation Daily has been really good at over the course of the time that we've been around, not me, but all of you who are a part of this, is we've been able to have a good-natured, well-intended conversation that hasn't, kind of turned into personal attacks, with fan to fan. But in terms of being upset and having a right to vent, I agree with Drew on that. That's one of the reasons why we exist here. And listen, I think we're all, big boys and girls from the standpoint that we know that it's going to be a pretty intense conversation on a day like this. I'm not going to run from that. I'm not going to be scared of that. And, I'm going to hear from some opposing fans who maybe think we've talked a little too much on this show about where Georgia's heading in the future. I'm going to take my medicine on that. And in terms of some of you who think I've carried the water too much for Jake Fromm, or in terms of some of you who think I'm not as critical of Jim Chaney as you want me to be, I'll stand here and let you say your piece there as well. This is a show that believes very much in freedom of speech for the most part, and certainly one of the reasons why we take so many comments and why I interact with the comment section as much as I do is because, there are plenty of places you can go on the internet to find out what somebody else thinks about Georgia football, some writer, some dude with a microphone. We've always wanted DawgNation Daily to be more than that, a place where you feel like you have a chance to vent for yourself, and Drew's 100% right about that. This is not a day for sunshine and rainbows. This is a day for fans to get something off their chest, and we're going to allow you to do that here on our program. So, Drew, I appreciate you weighing in and saying that. Henry Cabot Lodge criticizing Kirby Smart. Kirby's going to get some of that. I don't know if it's so much as individual decisions in last night's game that you point to, as much as maybe it is the way this process was handled leading into this game. Frankly, I think it's fair to question, should Kirby Smart have even signed Justin Fields? If this was the only plan for Fields, and if Fields was only going to be happy immediately becoming the starter, despite his previous statements to the contrary, then maybe Smart made a coaching error by even bringing in Justin Fields if they didn't have more plans for him than this, and if Fields was going to be dissatisfied as being a backup quarterback. The same way that DeAndre Baker had a business decision to make in terms of not playing in this game, and other guys are contemplating their own transfer. When you see the social media stuff on Saturday, it almost seemed like the entire team had gone into business for itself, going rogue on social media in a way that we're not used to seeing. Different factions kind of thinking more about themselves and the collective desire and the goal bigger than themselves of the team. It's probably fair to ask, did Kirby Smart have complete control of this roster in the city of New Orleans heading into what's going to happen against Texas? Certainly on the field, it certainly seemed like this was a disheveled outfit, and I know that privately they're probably discussing some of that right now. Juice Man Block Boy says not having Mel Tucker hurt us as well. That was another challenge that Georgia dealt with last night. Tucker now the head coach of Colorado, and that's another pair of hands, another pair of eyes that could have helped out defensively, and Tucker was not there. Matt Rukavina says the problem is we couldn't do diddly poo offensively every time they got the ball. So listen, Georgia's offense last night was not good enough. No doubt about that. No doubt about that at all. And as I've said before, I don't know why the running game disappeared last night the way that it did. Cuthbert Rubio says, I'm with the Dogs. Fromm didn't miss all those tackles. Texas played better last night. As far as missed tackles go, I know in some cases Georgia's had some issues with that all season long, but a lot of veteran coaches will tell you that missed tackles are a big part of the bowl season every single year because of, I don't, to be honest with you, 100% understand this, but, Georgia talks a lot about how it spends its first few bowl practices practicing for itself, fundamentals, things of that nature. That includes tackling. And then as you get closer to the bowl, it seems like you have, less physical practices and more focused on the game plan for an opponent you're having to learn about pretty quickly there at that point in time. So a lot of veteran coaches will tell you that missed tackles are a big part of the bowl season every single year. It was certainly an issue for Georgia last night. A couple more comments, and we're going to get ready to get out. Jack Dudley says Chaney has one game plan. If that doesn't work, we're screwed. This is a team, for better or for worse, that is built around the notion of the power running game and establishing that and dominating in that regard. And last night, Georgia didn't have it, and last night, Georgia did kind of look screwed when it was all said and done, but not being able to get that done. So I guess the only thing to say in conclusion here is that as hard as it may be to believe, there are probably happier days ahead at some point in time, and it'll we'll have a conversation here at DawgNation Daily. It'll be a lot more fun after this. For now, though, New Orleans is pretty foggy, pretty nasty, and that probably reflects the mood of a lot of Georgia fans here as well. We appreciate you allowing us to give you some Northside Hospital post-game coverage today. Wish it was a happier subject, but we'll certainly continue to follow all of this wherever it goes, including the next move for Justin Fields, some of these Georgia juniors who pretty much all say they're going to take a little bit more time before they make their ultimate decision, and whatever else is kind of said about what went wrong against the Sugar Bowl and what needs to happen to make things go right here in 2019. We'll talk a lot about that, including some pretty good news coming for Georgia in the recruiting trail the next couple days there as well. For Connor Raleigh here on site in New Orleans, Michael Carville back in our Atlanta studios. Thanks so much for being a part of our coverage of DawgNation Daily here today, and for Mike Griffith and Chip Towers on DawgNation.com and the tireless work they've done to get ready for all of this. We appreciate you making all of that possible. We're on our way back to Atlanta. We'll see you back at our DawgNation World headquarters tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.